What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be taking a look at some of the new cards that were announced over the past week, including new Predaplant cards, which are in Dimension Force, the new Sky Striker cards that are going to be part of the special, basically the follow-up to last year's Prismatic box, along with the Mayakashi and Witchcrafter cards we've already looked at, and a couple of random cards that didn't really have a lot of placement otherwise. So let's jump into the video and take a look at these new cards. I have to be honest, I am pretty excited because I think these Predaplant cards are really, really strong. And I think the Sky Striker cards are insanely good, but I'm saving those for the end because I do think that's going to be the most meta-impacting, if you will. But let's take a look at this Predaplants first. So Predaplant BYBLISP, I don't know, I probably botched that one, is the first one that we've got here. It's a level 1 dark plant monster, obviously. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add one Predaplant monster from your deck to your hand, except Predaplant BYBLISP. If a monster with a predator counter is on the field, you can special summon this card from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect of this card once per turn. This is a lot. First of all, sending it to the graveyard is not hard, especially in Predaplants, especially using things like Verte Anaconda for fusion purposes, some of the other Predaplant cards that directly mill. So there's obviously 1,000 different ways you can make this work, but getting a search of any kind from the deck is really strong, especially something like Orphis Scorpio. Any way to get that faster means Predaplant's sort of central strategy can be achieved a little bit more easily. And then, of course, the Predaplant counter effect is solid. It's not super prevalent because a lot of the cards that put Predaplant counters, at least so far from what I've seen, like the already existing card pool, aren't exactly all that great, but I do think there might be one or two new cards that have a way to place them, and if they're more easy to put on the field, then the self-revival effect obviously becomes a bit stronger. So I'm interested, we'll look at those. I'm kind of reacting to these for the first time here as I go through them, but I think this is definitely a solid piece of support for the deck that does well enough to replace itself and give you some searchability, so it definitely gets a pass on my end. Predaplant BUFOLLICULAR, I don't know if that's correctly pronounced either, is a level 1 dark plant pendulum monster with a pendulum effect that says during your main phase you can fusion summon one dark fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material. So that's going to explain how we get the fusion summoning part of that whole thing done. And obviously you have cards like Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, you have Greedy Venom Fusion Dragon, and I think there's another Predaplant one, Dragostapelia. So there's a decent amount of fusions already, but we do have another one here that we'll get to in a minute. If this card is used as material for a fusion summon and sent to the graveyard, or added to the extra deck face up, you can add one face up dark pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand, except this card. You can only use this effect once per turn. So, if you use this card as fusion material either on the field or in your hand, it's going to trigger its effect, essentially. So if it's added to the extra deck, because cards that are on the field that are pendulums that are removed from the field are automatically sent to the extra deck, they basically made it such that no matter how you use this guy for fusion summoning, you can get that pendulum effect. So face up dark pendulum monster from the extra deck. There are some Predaplants that meet that criteria, as well as other cards that do as well, and this doesn't really lock you into anything specific, so I guess it could have other uses, you know, if you're playing the Predaplant engine or something. So that's just kind of food for thought, something to consider, but it's primarily designed to work in its own deck as far as I can tell, and it's a scale 0, which is great because it should synergize really well with this one, Predaplant Triantis. This is a level 8 monster that is also a scale 8, so you have 0 to 8. That's a good range, even though pendulums as a whole have been kind of nerfed with the Master Rule changes. You can use cards in your pendulum zones as material to fusion summon a dark fusion monster as if they were monsters on the field. So this essentially can use itself. It can also use BUFOLLICULAR, which kind of, if you think about it and sort of piece the combo together, you see how if you have both of these, you can fusion summon using them, and then you get the extra search. It all kind of comes together, and being able to use cards in your pendulum zones can let you clear cards out. You can add them back. There's some really cool interactions there, and I think both of these pendulum monsters are really solid. Don't forget, Predaplants also have Spider Orchid, which was in dual power, which is a really strong card, and there's a few other pendulums I think they have, but to be honest, off the top of my head, I don't know how practical they are. But this effect is really neat, and it does sort of help that deck get fusion summons accomplished without needing to play things like polymerization, obviously, which is a good thing. If this card is used as material for a fusion summon and sent to the grave, or is added to the extra deck face up, you can place one predator counter on a number of monsters on the field, up to the number of monsters you control, and if you do, any of those monsters that are level 2 or higher become level 1 as long as they have a predator counter. So this is the one I was referring to. This allows you to place predator counters a lot more easily. It's up to the number of monsters you control, but you should control at least one if you're triggering this effect. So you can put a Predaplant counter on an opponent's monster, This isn't targeting anything, so you're just placing the counters, which is a neat distinction because certain Predaplant cards will be like target an opponent's monster, put a counter on it, and things that are immune to targeting or whatever are going to be a lot less frightened by that. Whereas if you combo this with something like Dragostapelia, who negates the effects of monsters with Predator counters, you see where there's some end boards you can start to build that are actually going to be more effective than just sort of gimmicky nonsense. And the effect, of course, making them all level 1 is neat in the sense that, like, if you're playing against synchro decks, you can really disrupt what they're able to do. I don't think that's really, like, a key component to take away from the Predator counter abilities, but comboing with stuff like Dragostapelia to negate effects is definitely a strong option. Predaplant Ambromeridus, these names are rough, is a really good level 5 plant fusion monster. It is something that can be summoned off of instant fusion, and I'll tell you why that's relevant now. If this card is fusion summoned, you can add one Predaplant monster or one Predap spell or trap from your deck, graveyard, or face-up extra deck to your hand. You can target one monster your opponent controls with a Predator counter, or one monster you control, tribute it, and if you do, special summon one Predaplant monster from your deck. So this is really powerful. Tributing removal is really, really strong and not something that we see a lot because of its usefulness. But combining this with your new card here, Triantis, you can put a counter on an opponent's monster and then you can tribute that monster to basically get yourself a free Predaplant from the deck. So you tribute that monster, you special summon Orphis Scorpio, you discard a card, you're removing your opponent's problems while also advancing your own game state, which is a super useful thing to have access to. Of course, it does target this effect, so you can't just, like, tribute the monster as cost, which is a balancing factor for sure, but it does allow you to out problematic cards, and just being fusion summoned in general lets you search any monster or Predap spell or trap. One of the biggest problems about the Predaplant spell and trap support before was you had no way to really search it. This does sort of help to increase that consistency a little bit and get access to some of those cards that maybe weren't as great before, and so I'm definitely happy about it as a whole. You can summon this off of Instant Fusion and resolve both of its effects, which is really cool. You get the search, and then you could even tribute, you know, this card itself, because it's going to die during the end phase with Instant Fusion anyway, and combo off. You can use Instant Fusion from the deck with Anaconda, but of course that's not really going to be super viable here because you want to be able to special summon again, and Anaconda locks you out of summoning after you resolve its effect. But this card really is summonable just with the two pendulums, and you're not losing too much in terms of resources because if you fusion summon with them, you can actually add the other copies back, and so you're able to get some momentum going without losing too much advantage. So overall, this is a really, really good card. I do think it's the best Predaplant support piece that they got. It is a little unfortunate that it requires two Predaplants versus requiring like a Predaplant and a Dark Monster, but I totally understand the reasoning behind it because it would be really abusable otherwise. And then the last one for Predaplant, Starving Venom Predator Fusion Dragon. This is always treated as a Predaplant card. It needs a Dark Fusion monster and any Fusion monster, so a little tricky to summon, but you can definitely make that work, especially in this deck, and it's a cool Super Poly target in some scenarios. Once per turn when a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you contribute one monster on the field, either field, with a Predator counter, and if you do, negate the activation. If this Fusion Summon card you control is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, you can target one Dark Monster in your graveyard and special summon it. This feels like a bit of a win more card, but that is a really powerful effect to be able to have it on the field and have an opponent's monster with a Predator counter, and then your opponent activates the fact you're like, I'm tributing your monster to negate your card effect. That's trolly and like really cool in concept, but I just don't think it's going to be something you're going to see happen as often as you'd like because it is reliant on the opponent controlling a monster. In most cases, maybe if you have your own monster with a Predator counter, you contribute to negate, but it's not really worth the effort you have to go through to put it out in most cases. I don't think it's terrible. I definitely think it's a cute card that has some, you know, uses. But overall, it's not anywhere near as good for the deck, in my personal opinion, as this card, because this card does seem to do a lot more and allows you to get into some better end boards than you'd get here with this guy, where he's got a really good effect if he's removed from the field and he can negate stuff, but getting those Predator counters on the field is not always going to be the easiest thing to do, even if it seems that way on paper. Moving on to Illegal Knight. This is a random card that's Brave Token support for Dimension Force. I didn't see any other Brave Token support with it, so I'm guessing it's just a one-off. This is a level 8 Dark Monster, and by that I mean level 7 Dark Monster. Fiend, during the main phase if you control no monsters, or you control a Brave Token, you can special summon this card from your hand. If you control Brave Token, quick effect. You can target up to 2 cards your opponent controls, give control of this card to your opponent, and if you do, return those cards to the hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. So, I'll rely on you guys who are Brave Token players to tell me whether or not this seems good. I think on paper it seems neat, and from what I know about the deck, I could see uses for it. But I'm not going to comment on it much more beyond just sort of covering the effect, because I do really have questions about his viability, but I know people like the engine. Not really sure where this card stands. I'll have to do a more comprehensive look at the deck as a whole as we get closer to its release, but right now we're just putting it out there for the effect. Psychic and Punisher is another card from Dimension Force with some absolutely badass artwork for the record. A level 11 Psychic Synchro monster, 1 tuner, 1 non-tuner monsters. While your life points are equal to or lower than your opponent's, this Synchro Summon card is unaffected by your opponent's card effects. Once per turn, you can pay 1,000 life points, then target 1 monster you control and 1 card your opponent controls. Banish them. At the start of your battle phase, you can make this card gain attack equal to the difference between your life points and your opponent's. So, a lot going on here. The immunity thing is really cool, and Psychics as a whole are designed to pay life points for costs, so it does seem like it's designed to work within a pure Psychic deck best. Being able to pay life points to trigger its own effect, and of course, if you have another monster on the field, like, you know, get that removal going, is really good. Obviously, you don't want to banish this card itself, but you can banish other things that you have out. And that attack gain is not really anything to sneeze at. It looks like it's permanent as well, so at the start of the battle phase, you make it gain attack. It doesn't say anything about it not, you know, about it going away, so you can really start to stack up that those attack points, and if he's unaffected by stuff, then, you know, you're really in a good position. So this feels like a random card, but definitely a super cool card that I would keep an eye on, because it feels like it has a lot of potential, and it is generic, and it does not require Psychics, so it's a really cool card that I definitely think has some potential for sure. Now, speaking of potential, we get to the Sky Striker cards to wrap this up. So Sky Striker Mobilized Linkage is a quick play spell that says if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, send 1 other card you control to the graveyard. And if you do, special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. Then if you have at least 1 light and 1 dark Sky Striker Ace monster on your field and or in your graveyard, this summoned monster gains 1,000 attack. For the rest of the turn, you cannot special summon from the extra deck except Sky Striker Ace monsters. So basically, you send your Sky Striker Area 0, you grab any Sky Striker that you need from the extra deck, and then you basically can just start comboing off there a lot more easily. The send is not a cost, it is an effect, so being able to send something like Area 0 would trigger it. You can do all sorts of really cool combos with that, and the interactions are amazing. I am genuinely really excited to see what that will do. Obviously, Striker getting support is not going to sit well with everybody, but I think the deck is really fun, and I do think it's a cool sort of, it's not like the undisputed best deck or anything right now, but it's good to see that sort of exists within the meta, and people are going to hate it, people are going to like it, but the card itself is really strong. It's another good piece of support that combos extremely well with Strategic Striker HAMP. I do not know what that's short for, but this is a level 8 Dark Machine. It is always treated as a Sky Striker card, and if you control a Sky Striker Ace monster, you can special this card from your hand to either field by tributing 1 monster on the field. You can only do this once per turn, and if this card is destroyed by battle, you can target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. So it is a kaiju for strikers, which we've talked about a little bit in the past. It does not require an effect to do that tribute, so that's all like a summoning condition, which means it's a lot harder for the opponent to respond to it. And you can get this off of Engage, you can get this off of Area 0, you can get this a million different ways, so this is going to go a long way to really helping Striker take a step back towards that top level, in my opinion, especially combined with this, which really just gives you so many more options. This with Area 0 is really going to be where your strongest interactions happen, but I think both cards are really good, and I'm excited to see where they put them. I'm thinking maybe Ghosts from the Past with some reprints of some of the more pricey cards would be a good fit, but we will see what they do. So that is going to do it for this video. A lot of really cool cards in Dimension Force. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what type of impact they may have. I do want to wish you guys a happy holidays for whatever it is you celebrate. There will be one more video coming up this week, the day before Christmas Eve. It's already been recorded. It is a big holiday opening and a little bit of a holiday giveaway at the end. I am not going to be recording any more content this week. I'm going to take some time to spend with family and friends and enjoy it, but we will resume next week with new content. Hopefully there'll be some more material to cover, maybe with Master Duel and the market and thousands of other things. So thank you guys for all the support. It's been a really, really strong end of the year for the channel, which is awesome, and I'm extremely grateful for it because I really do have fun doing this, even if I seem all over the place at times. But hopefully you guys did enjoy the video, and like it if you did, and comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about these new cards, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.